As a preliminary matter, this is Gary Ballard, Chair, the Advisory Committee for Non-Voting Taxpayers. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. So we'll start with Lou Bassano. I know he's there because I can see him, but he's still on mute. Good morning, Lou. Peter Halley.
Here.
Bill Gardner.
Here.
Don Green.
Present.
And Kathy Baird.
Here.
And delightfully, Mary's with us as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. This open meeting of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we've been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends a requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting may feature public comment, though I don't see anyone from the public on. For this meeting, we are convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website. Please note this meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. Public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I indicate otherwise. We're now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each to provide any comment or motion. Please hold until your name is called. Please, meantime, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair. With respect to items with public comment, after members have spoken, I will afford public comment to those members of the public that have joined the meeting via Zoom. Members of the public who wish to speak must state their names and be acknowledged by and speak through the chair. And finally, vote taken this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And that's the end of the script. I think, as you all know, we are still waiting to see whether the governor will be either extending the existing order or passing new legislation that will permit remote type meetings to continue after July 15th. Right now, the emergency order has been extended until July 15th. But after July 15th, if nothing is changed, the rules will revert back to the requirement that the meetings have to be in person. The town and our representatives, both the representatives from the Senate and the legislature, both representatives have been sponsoring a bill with others that would permit remote and hybrid meeting in the future. I know that the town has asked me, and I have written a letter to the head of the Senate and the head of the House of Representatives on behalf of both our committee, Advisory Committee for Non-Voting Taxpayers, and as a owner, a Nantucket property owner and taxpayer generally, saying we think it's really important that the new legislation that will permit remote and hybrid meetings to continue, because there are so many different interest groups that are able to participate in town government as a result of the ability to do so electronically. And those folks will no longer be able to do that unless either the emergency order is extended, which I doubt, or the new legislation is passed. And I pointed out that people who are either aged or infirmed are unable to get to meetings at some time. And others, there are people with young families who have to be watching children and can't afford babysitters and stuff. And they also are will no longer be able to participate in town government. So, and I got a nice little note from the town saying, thank you for your letter, but it's really up to the legislature to see what they're going to do. In addition, at the request of the members of the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust, I also wrote a letter to the chairman of the Senate and the House of Representatives recommending that they pass the proposed law, which will, that's the law that you've heard about, we've heard about at our meetings, that will add a 0.5% tax on the sale of real estate over $2 million, which funds will be used for affordable housing. And so there are a lot of communities that are pushing for that as well, besides Nantucket. And so that's up for grabs as well in this current session of the legislature. And my recollection is that it's a very short window. The legislature, I think, finishes their work by the end of June, probably. And if these laws don't get passed by that particular time, they're dead. And the process has to start again in the next legislative session, which will be a shame. It means we have to start all of those activities, getting everyone writing letters and people speaking on behalf of for those things. So anyway, what that does mean, though, is that at least for us, we'll still be able to have 1 or 2 more meetings by Zoom. And then after, as I say, after July 15th, we'll have to see. What the town's doing, by the way, is at least the select board is doing, is they're having hybrid meetings, which I love. I have some organizations on whose board I sit that also are having hybrid meetings. And they were working fine. The select board's doing it, the HDC is doing it. And as I said, some other boards I sit on outside of Nantucket are doing it as well. So some people actually go attend the meetings and others attend by Zoom. And I think that's the best of all worlds, but we'll have to see what happens after that. Anyway, the first order of business is just the approval of the agenda for today's meeting. Can I have someone make a motion to approve that? Kathy sent that. Peter, okay, second. Oops.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Don. All in favor, just raise your hands. I'll see you all. And Mary, I assume your hair is raised. Thank you. Okay, the agenda is approved. The next item is the approval of the minutes for the February 26th meeting that Kathy has sent out. Any comment on the minutes? Kathy always sends out nice and fulsome minutes. If no suggestions to improve them, can I have a motion to approve the minutes, the February 26 minutes? Peter, okay. Second is Don, is Bill. I mean, Lou Bassano raised his arm, I think. And so all in favor, say aye. Everybody, Don's on, everybody's
Aye.
on mute. Good to hear you all.
Aye,
Okay,
aye.
thank you all. All
Thank
right,
you.
so, and the next item on the agenda is welcome to new members if applicable. And the only new member that we have, but I'm not sure he's a new member yet, is Jay Cohn. In communications with the town, they have confirmed to us that they actually did approve Jay as a new member, but he never got the notice and he's not been sworn in yet. So he's kind of a member in waiting, and we'll have to see. He'll have to get to the island and get sworn in and stuff to be officially a member. So that's the only other thing on the agenda. Well, I guess what I'd like to talk about a little bit is that, as you recall, at our last meeting, the last meeting was with Andrew Vorse and Leslie, and we spent a lot of time on the short-term rental issue. And as you recall, we listened to what the town suggested, and we concluded that it made sense to do so. And we prepared a resolution which was approved by you folks. And I sent a letter to the select board. And we also sent a note to the Inky and the Current telling them that this was our recommendation to the select board. Anyway, little did I know it would create a flurry of angry people writing to me. Somebody wrote to my wife thinking it was me, you know, very unhappy. And it just so happens to be there's a group of folks in Monomoy who don't like the idea because they don't want any short-term rentals, you know, on Monomoy, even though there are a ton of them available if you go on the website now. And so one letter, and it was sent to the Inky, you know, said, why are they speaking for the non-voting taxpayers? Who the heck are they? And et cetera. So I sent a long letter to these folks. And so I think they understand that we do our best to make sure we have the pulse of the seasonal folks, and we do our best. And sometimes we get a lot of people attending our meetings. And sometimes, like now, we get none attending our meetings. And we use our best judgment based on the long years of experience that all of us have had on the island all these years. But as I think you know, I don't know if you folks all get copies of the Inky during the off season, but the discussion about the short-term rentals is at a pitch, I would just call it ferocious. Ferocious, very sad, very sad. I mean, Nantucket is probably no different than the rest of the world these days, where the pros and the cons are so far from each other that neither seems to think any kind of compromise is possible. And bitter words exchanged against each other. Nobody thinks the other people have any common sense about what they're alleging. And that doesn't, it's not just the short-term rental, you know, the same issues are happening with the Sconset Bluff. That's been going on for quite a while. And the select board's in the middle of that as well. And I mean, I think it's sad, you know, Nantucket as an island really needs to have its act together, especially because of our strange population, which is, you know, 10 or 15,000 in the winter and 50 and 70,000 in the summer. And it would be good if people talk to each other, you know, in a proper manner and were willing to listen and reason. But gee, from what I can see, this is much different than the old days. The select board is up now, and there's how many openings are there, Kathy? 2?
I think there's
Select
2,
board.
yeah.
Matt
There's
Fee
3.
Matt Fee has to run for re-election, and Christy Ferrantella has decided not to run. And so there are 3 people that have emerged to fill those slots. One is Matt Fee, who has submitted the papers, but the other 2 are people, one of whom is for short-term renters, but the other one is not for short-term renters. So it's, which is a shame. That's the people shouldn't be, one issue people shouldn't be running for select board, you know, on that basis. And the town meeting that's coming up in what's the date of that town meeting? May 2nd?
May 2nd
Yeah,
and
May 2nd.
onward. And they think it will go at least 2 nights. That's the rumor.
Yeah, the good news is they're not trying to do it all as they did last year, you know, in one long day, which had about 700 people at the beginning and less than 100 at the end, making decisions on behalf of, quote, the entire, Nantucket community.
Gary, we have a new a guest, I think, joining, Barbara Tibbetts. So I don't know if that's somebody that.
I don't know if that's her phone or if that's somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just make sure we know who she is. Barbara, can you unmute yourself and turn on your video? Please.
I can unmute myself, but based on the fact that I'm still in my pajamas, I cannot show my face.
Okay, that's fine. You're fine.
I just wanted to listen in to learn.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for joining us, Barbara.
Thank you.
So as you've heard, there's a lot of contentious issues that are going to be dealt with at the annual town meeting and at the election, which is a week or 2 afterwards. One of the things we put on the agenda today, I think we've talked enough about the issues we've dealt with before, but there was a proposal which is part of the voting that is going to occur at the annual town meeting. And that is a series of proposals that are designed to change the charter for the town of Nantucket. And they've gotten very little publicity. I'm surprised that I haven't seen any publicity on those articles at all in the Inky. And when I read almost every weekly version, and I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen a lot of debate about the issues. So I thought that at least we should mention it to you folks, not that we have a right to vote or anything, but I can tell you that as you folks recall, in our sessions over the last year or 2, we had representatives, John Brescher and also Tucker Holland, both of whom are members of the Town Government Study Committee. And we had them appear, and they joined us for our meetings, a couple of meetings over the last year and a half. And I also attended some of their meetings myself on Zoom, and I participated in made some comments, etc. And I think that the Town Government Study Committee was doing a good job. Unfortunately, they got a little bit distracted from their main goal. Their main goal was to consider whether or not the current form of government, that is this straight democracy kind of thing, still makes sense for the town of Nantucket. And in the process, they started studying what was permissible under Massachusetts law, which are a few other forms of government. Now, Massachusetts law doesn't allow communities complete freedom. The home rules in Massachusetts are very difficult. And in order to even have a mayor, you have to have a certain size. So we couldn't have a mayor, even if we wanted one. But there is another form of government that some communities have adopted. Just a small number of communities in Massachusetts have adopted, and it's called the representative form of government. And in that type of representation, what they do is they take the entire community and they break it up into a whole bunch of groups, and they end up with representatives for each different geographic portion of that community. And so in one of the towns, I forget which the name of the town, which I've been reading about and following, they have a representative form of government. They have 200 representatives representing about, I think it's about 20 or 30,000 people. And those 200 people are their legislature.
No,
And
I'm on the conference call with the Nantucket committee, but I'm on mute.
No, you're not.
no, I can hear you.
I just muted him.
Oh, okay. So, in this, so how does this community work? I forget, I think it's Lexington. How does this community work? When they have an annual town meeting, instead of trying to get 10,000 or 20,000 people voting, and they get a small percentage anyway, these 200 people go and they vote. And in theory, the 200 people have citizens for which they are the representative, maybe 500 or 1,000 people. And in theory, those 500 or 1,000 people are able to actually express their point of view to their representatives. And so when these representatives are voting on behalf of their communities, that's how the island is, or that's how those communities are represented in their legislature. In the discussions that the Town Government Study Committee had on this subject, as I say, I attended some of them. They actually the committee, five or six of them actually left the island, and they went to visit with these other communities to see how it works. I think there were 5 members of the Town Government Study Committee in one of the sessions that I watched, and I think 3 were against changing anything, and 2 kind of said maybe we ought to try it, maybe we ought to recommend it. But they finally decided that we don't have enough information. We haven't studied this well enough to know how this would affect the island of Nantucket. For instance, if we have, as I say, 15,000 permanent residents, how many representatives would that mean? Would we have 50? Would we have 100? And how would we choose them? And so none of that discussion was gotten into any grainy details. Don, you're on mute. Unmute yourself and then tell us.
I lived in Reading, Mass for a number of years. And
Yes.
we had that type of government. The town is 24,000 people.
Yes.
Divided into 9 precincts. And town meeting was over 2 or 3 days, but held more regularly than what happens in Nantucket. Also, the decision-making bodies were not just the town meeting members. There was a financial committee that studied the various issues in detail and were prepared to make a report. as well as the different heads of the town governments, like the chairman of the Board of Health. Also, the town manager was there with the rest of his department to be able to discuss the issues. And there was a town moderator who sort of kept things moving and made sure everything remained civil. But people could get up, walk to the microphone, speak their piece before votes were taken. And each precinct had, I think, 8 or 9, maybe more than that, maybe nearer to 20 representatives from each precinct, which were about the same population size. So, and that's how it operated. It's been operating that way for.
That's very interesting, Don. That's really interesting. I hadn't heard of that about Reading. I've heard of some other towns, Lexington and stuff.
Just a
You know-
second, Gary. One more thing. We have another person who I've asked in the chat to identify themselves. It just initials RL. So if you can please identify yourself and change your name so we know who you are. The public meeting, and we really have to know who's on the call.
They have to unmute themselves. They're muted.
Yes, so unmute yourself, please, and identify give me your name so we know who you are. And say hi. And if we can't do that, I think we have to put you back in the waiting room.
Right.
Not our choice, but that's what the public meeting laws require.
Good morning.
Oh, hello.
Hello, Robert and Maggie Levy from Parson Lane.
Robert who?
Levy, Levy from Parson Lane. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you.
Okay.
Just to continue a little bit more,
Yeah, yes.
also, you would hear, as Jermaine, from like when the town budget came up and the various items going into the budget, if there was a head of a department, they would, either support what was being in the budget or what things could be left out. And I was actually chairman of the Board of Health, and I did speak before town meeting to
Yeah.
speak on the budget.
Well, that's very interesting. So the conclusion of, anyway, as I was mentioning before, the Town Government Study Committee went to some of these towns and they looked at it and they started debating it. And what they finally concluded was that we haven't done enough detailed homework to figure out how many representatives we would need on the island and how we would choose who represents, which geographic sections or whatever. That was one thing they said. The second thing they said, which is correct, is that we haven't given enough notice to the public. And in order for this change in the charter to become a representative form of government versus the what they call the democratic form of government today, the direct democracy, it would have to be approved at the annual town meeting. And having had no public input, it would be premature to even consider coming up with a resolution recommending it. Not that they had concluded that they would like to recommend it, but even if they had concluded it, that they should take a town vote. There has been no open discussion in the town. There've been no articles about it. And so they kicked that can down the road. And instead, they spent the rest of their time as the Town Government Study Committee looking at a whole bunch of other issues, which in one way or another, it was a good thing someone's looking at. I'm not sure that was the charter of the committee, but they were looking at whether or not they should change the rules as to how many signatures are needed to have a resolution go to the annual town meeting. a whole bunch of sections. Um, and the last recommendation and so there was a whole series of those recommendations, which we'll talk about in a minute. And their last recommendation was that since their term was expiring by definition, the Town Government Study Committee term was over. They were recommending that a new Town Government Study Committee be created with or without some of the same members or maybe different members, but whose sole purpose would be to do what was the sole purpose of the committee in the first place, which is to study the right form, which is the right form of government for Nantucket. And they were trying to figure out a way so that if the committee is resurrected to continue, they won't get distracted by all the other issues, that this would be their sole item. And that's what they'd have to spend their time doing, educating the public and then coming to a conclusion. So that's what happened. And that was their final report. Their final report was submitted to the select board several months ago. And if any of you would like to read it, it's available. You can go on the town's website, you go to the Town Government Study Committee, and you will see it's a 51-page report. It's a very interesting report. And however, as a result of some of the conclusions that they came to, they did, even though they didn't come up with an article for the town meeting relating to changing the form of government from direct democracy to representative, they did put something in as a home rule petition under Article 78 of the current annual town meeting warrant. And so I have it before me. Let me just cover some of the items that, and Kathy, you looked at it too, I think so. The first, one of the recommendations that they made that, right now, Sarah Alger does a great job as a town moderator, but she has to be reelected every year. And they finally said, this is crazy. She does a great job. She's been doing it for a year. Let's change it so that the moderator will now be elected for 3-year terms. They all said yes. Anyway, that's Article 2, Section 2.2. That's one of their recommendations that is coming to the annual town meeting to change the moderator's term from 1 year to 3 years. The next thing was interesting, is Section 2.4. It turns out that the town clerk, who is the clerk for the town, for some reason, there was nothing in the existing bylaw that said that the town clerk has to be a registered voter of the town. So they made an amendment. So Section 2.4 is to amend the existing rule so that the clerk shall be a registered voter of the town. Okay. What else? There's some other crazy ones. Here's one. The select board shall publish the warrant with the recommendations of the finance committee by mailing a copy of such warrant to the address of each registered voter. The old rule was 7 days in advance. Anyway, their recommendation is that it should be 14 days in advance. They want to say 2 weeks. So let's see what else. Then there's another change that they're recommending.
That's for, I think, the one about the non-voting taxpayers being able to having, Sarah.
No, before that, there's something that says that the select board shall insert in the warrant for the annual meeting something that has been requested of them in writing by 50. Well, let me tell you what this is all about. Right now, under the current rules, anyone that wants to have an article voted on at the annual town meeting, all he or she has to do is get 10 signatures. 10 signatures, which, to me is a little ridiculous. And it's easy for anyone to go get 10 signatures, even on crazy stuff that they want to recommend. Somebody has a bee in their bonnet, they go get 9 other people, they sign it themselves. Next thing you know, right, that's for the annual town meeting, okay? The current rules also say if there is a special town meeting, which sometimes has to occur several months later, and you want to put an article in that warrant, the current law says, you need to get 25 signatures for that. Anyway, the Town Government Study Committee concluded that, we're getting all these crazy ideas at people, and it's easy for them to get signatures. So the proposal that they have here is that the new requirement, if approved, I'm not sure the voters will approve this, will say for the annual town meeting, instead of 10 signatures, you need to get 50 signatures. And for a special town meeting article to go in the warrant, you need to get 100 signatures. So those are the changes from 10 to 20, 10 and 25 instead to 50 and 100. So that's one of the proposals that is in that, right? The next one is the one Kathy started to mention. As you know, under the current rules, the couple of the town bylaws say that the only people who are allowed to speak at the annual town meeting are voters. And the one exception is the chairman, the vice chairman, or our designate of the of our committee, advisory committee for non-voting taxpayers. What they talked about and what they're recommending in this warrant that says, not changing that, but also saying the moderator in his or her sole discretion may permit additional non-resident property owners to speak at any annual or special town meeting on matters before the meeting. So I think that's a good idea. And I know when Kathy went to the last meeting and Sarah was the moderator, she seemed to be sympathetic to the fact that Kathy's group, really needed to be heard, and she was struggling to find some way to let at least another voice be heard at that meeting. So that's one of their proposals. So those are the only ones that I think, there's a couple of other little changes, but nothing that I'm aware of that is of any import. But those are changes to the town charter that are in the warrant, and they've gotten very little publicity. And I think they make sense. I don't know whether they'll be approved by the voters. The only question I have for you folks is, do you think we should weigh in on any of those or all of them? Or we have a choice. We can do nothing. We can be silent, or we can come up with a resolution and say, we think that makes sense. Peter, what do you think? Get off mute, Peter, and then tell us what you think. You're still on mute.
Yep. Okay. Here's the question I have, and it is, what is our purpose and mission? My understanding was that it was to provide advice to the select board, and if that's correct, then it would seem to me that we really don't have a role as this group as advocates for a host of things that the select board really has not much or anything to do with. we could, but not with respect to this particular article, Article 78. If these were issues that we could advocate to the select board, that they have a select board, article that handles these things. Maybe this is I guess this is an article that comes from the Town Government Study Committee, but in actuality, is it a select board article? Because
It's actually proposed by the town. In other words, the town town administration can, for instance, the short-term rental stuff that's all the fuss is about didn't come from the select board. They were unable to make a decision on that. So it actually came from, the planning committee. So the fact is the town can put an article in the warrant, and these changes from the Town Government Study Committee were proposed. I don't know whether or not the select board opined on them. I don't remember.
Yeah.
But
Is there any opinion that's in the warrant? I can go look and see if they did they put an opinion in there? I can look while you're still talking if you want me to.
yeah, why don't you? Yeah, look,
What number is that one?
78.
It's interesting too, that in the Civic League's Meet the Articles meeting that's this afternoon, I don't know that that's one of the ones that they're gonna even talk about. And you're right, it's something that you think people would want to talk about.
Yes, it's got very,
Let me see if I can find it.
is the rule at the town meeting, and I must say the rules at the town meeting are a little bit opaque to me, having only attended one. If an article is not called, does it automatically pass, or it goes into a group of articles that are voted on en masse?
yes,
Yeah, so I guess in as much as everything that you found in this particular article,
yep.
I would think are things that we would support. Does it make any, and if this article seems to be a sleeper, do we want to call extra attention to it, or just let it sail through? I don't know, maybe there are other things in the article that are not particularly good, but
Well, no, I mean, I think you're right that our mission is to advise the select board, and the select board obviously is aware of all of these issues because the select board got this report from the Town Government Study Committee, and they did discuss it during the report that when the Town Government Study Committee submitted its final report. John Brescher attended that select board meeting, and he went through quickly, not in terribly long detail, but he spent about 15 to 20 minutes, I think, at least as I recall, going through a number of these issues that he's recommending. And as I say, I've seen just no comment about it, and I don't recall the select board talking about it. What they were talking about when that presentation was made, much more what they focused on was whether, since the purpose of this Town Government Study Committee was to make recommendations as to the form of government, their focus was, well, maybe we have to resurrect this committee for another term, but limit their work to just the form of government. That's what the discussion was about. And they did talk about that. And by the way, I attended that select board meeting by Zoom, of course. And when they said, yeah, well, probably you ought to resurrect that committee, I raised my little hand on Zoom and I said, and by the way, when you form that committee for studying the correct form of town government for Nantucket, I'd like to recommend that you include one or two members of the seasonal community of the non-voting taxpayers. And all Jason said was thank you. We'll take that under consideration. Lou.
A couple of fast questions. The number of names that are going to be needed to get a question on the ballot, you said as high as 100 people now are going to be needed. Are they just registered voters or
Only.
only
It's-
registered voters? That means that you
It's
and I
100
cannot put our
but
name.
only for a special town meeting. For the regular annual town meeting, it's 50 registered voters.
The question that I have, do those people signing that petition have to be registered voters? Or can those of us that don't vote put our name on that petition?
You must be registered voters.
That kind of puts us in a bind because we don't have any say as to what they're doing again. I don't know how we would deal with that, but perhaps.
Well, right now, we have no say. In other
Well,
words, right now, 10 people can put something on the warrant. We have no say. So I mean, my own personal view is that there ought to be a little bit more impetus for some of the articles that, and that's why I think their recommendation to go from 10 to 50 would be a good idea. But, you know, in either case, we have no vote in that.
it would be nice if we had an opportunity to put our names on something of that type
Yeah, well,
as
we
as
don't.
property owners.
We agree.
I know how far that would get. It would get nowhere. But
It wouldn't get on the warrant. It wouldn't be valid. What they do is after what happens is these people come up with their 10 voters, their 9 voters or 10 voters, right? And they submit the warrant. The town clerk has to then go verify that every one of those 10 signatures is a voter in good standing in the town of Nantucket. Otherwise, it can't get on the warrant.
the second point that I'd like to make is while the study commission is continuing looking at the issue of the forms of government that we have, under the present form of government, we should be looking at what powers can be transferred to the select board. Some of the more complicated issues that come before the town meeting. It may well make sense to have the select board who have people that they hire, attorneys, et cetera, that can advise them on some of those more complicated issues. First issue that comes to mind, and it always has, is the zoning issue. Zoning has been a major problem on the island, continuously changing. You have to hire an attorney if you're on the governing board to get their advice and to look at what's happened in the past. To just put a question on the ballot and say to the people, either vote for it or don't vote for it, they have even less information than the governing body has. It's something that I think we ought to look at. There are responsibilities that can be transferred to the select board from the general public because they have more knowledge and more resources to study those issues.
I have, Peter.
Yeah, as a practical matter, those are interesting ideas, but they are not encompassed in Article 78, and they're not going to be before this town meeting. What happens on my view from participating in one town meeting on the zoning issue is first of all, it's the zoning board and zoning board of appeals that takes care of zoning issues. And then if you don't like the outcome, you go to town meeting and it's basically a popularity contest. If people like you, you're likely to get something other than the right to murder your neighbor approved. And if they don't like you, you're not likely to get it approved. And the risk for the whole town on all that is, I guess, what they call spot zoning. In other words, if you depart from the zoning rules too often, you don't have any zoning rules as a matter of fact, because you're not following them. But so zoning is a whole separate subject, it seems to me. It's not really a select board issue, or probably shouldn't be. For the reasons you stated, Lou, it's a sort of an expert issue where you need to know the rules and follow them. But I don't think it really has, if we're talking about what we should do on Article 78, the issue is what should we do on Article 78? And I don't think you can't go with amendments that to the town meeting that are beyond the scope of the article because they're out of order. So I think the issue is, whether we want to say anything, and if so, what we want to say. If we were to say something about Article 78, I think we need to preface it with the notion that our interest is in streamlining and making more efficient town government and town meeting, and that under that rubric, certainly the 3-year terms issue helps to do that. The 14 days in advance means you have presumably better informed voters at the town meeting, and that's a good thing. Increasing the numbers of required signatures, in theory, should help to cut down the size of the town meeting, size of the warrant in the future. And that makes it more efficient for people as well. On the issue of speaking, the current rules on just the chair, the vice chair, and the vice chair's designee, and the issue being whether other non-residents have a right or will be given a privilege to speak at this town meeting. I think the best thing we could say is sort of, we don't object to that, because in a way it is, diluting the ACNVT's position. But I think we've seen that that there are people that beyond our group that probably have a good reason to be able to speak and be heard at the town meeting, and take views that we don't particularly espouse. So but I think the whole point is, if we're going to do something, it creates the efficiency and enhances democracy. More voices at the meeting, fewer warrants at the meeting.
Yeah, I guess the question for me is that whether or not we as a committee need to say to the select board, we agree with that. We agree with that. I mean, the select board, I assume, has no problem with it.
Yeah, Gary, I wasn't able to find any particular comment on it, maybe because it's submitted by the town. They don't comment. I don't
Yeah.
know. It was the FinCom commented on one part of it, that they approved it, but I don't think it hurts to give the select board, here's what we feel about it, just to be on the record. It's not going to change anything, but.
We could just take a position and say, I like Peter's suggestion to say, we think the recommendations under Article 78 will improve and enhance make more efficient the administration of the government. And so, in our view, we think it's a, I'm not sure how we would say, whether the select board doesn't have to do anything about it, and they don't have any more voting power than anybody else, because this is going to the town meeting. So
we've sort of seen that the people in the town have voted with their feet in the following way. They like a morning town meeting. They don't particularly like, the majority of those who go don't like an afternoon town meeting. That's the way it is.
by the way, in answer to Lou's question, I agree with Peter's comment about the zoning issues. Zoning, we have a zoning board that makes those decisions, but people are unhappy with them. They go to the town meeting, and as Peter said, it's nothing but a popularity contest. If the people who are asking for a personal zoning change on their property, if they are well known to the handful of people that are left at that point in the meeting, they'll get it through. I mean, it's an outrageous thing. None of that should go to the town meeting, but that's the way our system works today. And
That's why I said that perhaps the select people should be making some of those decisions
yeah,
because of the complications involved and the fact that it's an issue that you or I would not try to take on by ourselves. We would
Right.
hire an attorney.
what's interesting is that if you actually looked at what the town meeting has done over the last several years, they've done just the opposite, which you and I think makes sense, which is they've actually taken some authority away from the select board on certain issues because they don't like what they see, they don't like what the select board did, and they say, okay, now we're going to make sure it goes to the town meeting. I mean, they did that on a couple of issues over the last few years that very disappointing to me, but the town meeting is the town meeting.
Yeah, I think I agree with Lou that the select board has too little authority in general. And you could, for example, increase its spending authority somewhat. I don't know when the last time that was done. And simplify town meeting. I guess you still might have warrants that try to overturn things that the select board has done. But when you sort of stepping all the way back to where Gary started this conversation, which is the town, how do you reform or make better the town government? I mean, you've got a system already intact. You could get rid of the town meeting and just have the 5 members of the select board, and they're your representatives. That's the representative form of government. End of story. You have public meetings, and that's the way most cities do it. You've got a board of commissioners, whatever you want to call it, and you go there and you lobby them personally. You go there and speak at the meetings, and then they vote, and that's pretty much it. You could do that in Nantucket, but people are just not ready, I think, to give up the social aspects and the notion of personal control that they get from being able to publicly go to a public meeting and vote one way or another.
Yeah. So the question is, do you think it's worthwhile we saying anything? I know that's, from what I can hear, at least from a few of you folks, none of us think that those are bad recommendations. We think they're probably good, and they probably make things work a little better. You think it's worthwhile us doing something formal to put that in a resolution and send it select board? It's not going to mean anything.
Well, it means we're doing what we're supposed to do, is recommend, if we choose to the select board, if we have an opinion.
In theory, our job is to talk about issues of concern to the non-voting taxpayers, and I'm not sure that's an issue of concern, except the whole form of town government. That's of concern, but.
Well, also the ability for non-voting taxpayers to have the ability to speak at the moderator. I think that one in specific directly is us.
Yep.
You know?
I guess, in thinking of what our mission is, here's my question, is that if what is it, a bylaw that governs the town meeting and the way it's conducted? I mean, the right, I guess it is, of the chair, the vice chair, or his or her designee to speak would indicate that perhaps we have a broader mission than just advising the select board. And under that broader mission, we could comment on anything having to, that is brought up at the town meeting. Appropriately. And so I guess it just depends on how strongly people think about this, and whether our comments would be something that would be positively viewed or negatively viewed. In other words, do we sink the ship by saying these outsiders think these are really good ideas, that you should have to have 50 or 100 signatures on a warrant so there are fewer warrants?
Don?
Yeah, I think we have a certain amount of power that we use judiciously. We have people come in from different departments and we talk directly to them for over an hour or two. And it has had great influence on what happens on this island. As you remember, the hospital was going to be put where the water company was. The plans were all drawn up, and we had several knowledgeable members on the boards that this was not a good idea, and you could do it while building it right where it is. And that's what happened. And I do think like we turned the tide on that. Even the short-term rentals, we give direct input into the managing people on this island. So I don't feel powerless. In fact, I think we have although we don't have a vote, we have a direct line to the people who have to run this island.
Well, I think that's part of the good that we have done as a committee over the years, is to provide input to all these various town officials of some of the best ideas that we can provide to them based on our experience, not just in Nantucket, but in many other communities as well. I mean, we used to meet with the people on the roads, not that our views were always approved by the voters, but at least we had a chance to speak to the people in town administration who were working on these matters. And so I do think we provided a good benefit to the town, just to have them hear some other voices from outside the local community.
As you can remember, we had one of the planners for our island home here.
Yes, Rachel.
And I think we gave some pretty good input.
Well, I still think that's a subject that I don't know. I'm always troubled. Anytime you talk about our island home, it's not one of our subjects for discussion today. I
Okay,
think
well, I'm just pointing
to
out-
have a big expensive operation like that for 38 beds is the most ridiculous thing. We have to have a $5 million override every year, and it's madness. But anyway, the community really wants it, and it's going to stay like that. And they'll move it over to Sherburne. That's one of the items on the agenda. One of the items on the warrant this year, which we have not weighed in on, and I'm not suggesting we do, is that the town meeting is being asked to approve the necessary funding to continue with the proposal to take our island home and to move it to Sherburne along with the existing facilities for seniors. So
Well, I was only giving it as an example, not a board discussion.
I mean, when I think about every time I see that $5 million override and I see there's only 38
People have
beds.
to be, money isn't always, should be so high in the mix. I mean, these are people who have lived on the island a long time.
But Don, you know, as a medical professional, you know that it's almost impossible for us to get full-time employees now. We are spending, one of the reasons for the old island homes financial problems is that we have to bring these people in off island, right? They're paid huge sums. I mean, nursing has become a much fought over occupation now, because there aren't enough of them, especially after the COVID stuff. And our island home is having a real difficult time in getting full-time people to become part of the staff. And so we've had to spend 1.5 times as much money to bring these people from off island who don't stay here in order to service the 38 beds that we have in that facility. But anyway,
Well,
that's,
Again, I wasn't meaning to bring it up as a topic this time. Maybe we can put it on a future agenda.
okay. There's a
Yeah,
new-
I'll make a proposal.
Yes,
And so
okay.
we can move on to the next item. And I move that we write our opinion to the select board and to the town meeting moderator. I guess that would be the person to communicate with, that we're in favor of efficiency, democracy, and apple pie or something of that nature. I don't mean to belittle that. And that those specific items that you mentioned, Gary, 2.2, 2.4, the signature, whatever the signature item is, requiring for the increased number of signatures, and whatever the rules that would allow non-resident voters other than the chair or vice chair and designee to speak at the town meeting, and you might put in the moderator's judgment, good judgment.
That's what,
We
that's
think
what
that
they-
will, streamline and without the damaging democracy, the town meetings or something like that.
Mhm.
I move we do that, that's the sense of it, and we can write it up appropriately.
What do you think? Don, you want to do that? Lou, should we do that? Kathy would like to do that. Bill Gardner, what do you think? Another call or something, so.
So we would need a second. And if there's,
Okay, Lou seconds it. Okay, so let's try to draft something. Peter, do you want to?
Yes.
yeah, well, should we do it? Should we vote up or down? And
Okay, yes, let's have
Yeah,
a
yeah,
vote.
And then I'm thinking of something extremely short. I've not read.
Very
Article
short, just
7.
on a higher level saying.
Yeah.
We recommend that
Yeah.
the, or let's say, what do we say?
We could do it. It's just going to limit it to these items that we've discussed. And if we're in agreement that those are good things that should be passed, and we just let people know.
Okay, so how do we phrase that for a resolution?
Okay, so I move that we provide our advice to the select board and to the annual town meeting through the moderator. Because don't think anybody, I'm not going this year. I don't know about anybody else.
I'll be there.
Yeah, but I don't know if this is actually worth engaging in any debate upon.
Right.
Yeah, but you may all think that we are in favor of Article 78 because it streamlines the future conduct of annual town meetings without sacrificing the right of people to be heard at town meetings on issues of importance, or something, just something like that.
That's good.
Yeah.
We are in favor of Article 78. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Did somebody tell me who's actually read the article, that there isn't some horrible thing in Article 78 that we shouldn't be in favor of, but
No, I don't think so. No, I think not. Those are the recommended. So we're basically saying, we are in favor. We are in favor of Article 78 that's coming before the annual town meeting because we believe it will improve the efficiency and administration of the process of government in the town of Nantucket. Something like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So there was a motion made by Peter and a second by Lou. All in favor? Bill, yes. Yes. Peter, everybody hands up. Okay, unanimous. Thank you, folks. Kathy, you and I and Peter will have to work on making sure that language looks correct.
Okay. Whatever we
Okay.
decide on will go in the minutes that way.
Yep. Okay. Let's see, next on the agenda. Well, Kathy is going, Kathy mentioned there's a meeting, the Civic League is having its annual meeting this afternoon in a couple of hours, where they invite the representatives of all of the community associations to attend, and where they talk about the articles in the warrant. And I know Kathy's going to be was invited to speak at that meeting on behalf of her group, Nantucket Together. We are not speaking at that meeting, nor do we need to. So I'd just be interested in the feedback once that meeting's over. I'm just curious. Usually, you know, what happens with the Civic League, because they represent 27 or 28 different community associations. And in theory, they represent residents and non-residents. So I'm not sure that interested in the non-residents. But I have found in theory they don't often take positions because it's hard for all of those groups to speak with one voice. So we'll see what happens at that meeting today. Sometimes they take positions, but not always.
Let me provide a quick update on that, Gary. I got an
Okay.
email last night from Peter Morrison, who's one of the co-chairs of the NCL. And what they decided to do is they were going to present the articles, then they were going to have a panel discussion to talk about solutions for short-term rentals. And they were
Right.
having a group of people. They've decided to cut that out of there because they couldn't pull it off, I guess, in time.
It's
And
out of
made that-
control.
Yes, so they've made it it will be a separate panel discussion at some future date. They haven't defined the format. They haven't confirmed who all the panelists will be. I can't imagine when they would have it. Next Sunday is, it's Easter weekend, Saturday, and the next Saturday after that's Daffy. So I have no idea when they're going to do this, but there will be no panel discussion. But
Exactly my point.
the articles will be presented by their proponents, and questions will be allowed. So they're just allowing a larger question and answer, but there won't be a panel discussion. So what happened was, people got asked to be on the panel and then they said no, or somebody complained about, we can't have that person, that person's, whatever. I think there was a lot of, like you said, ugliness happening, and they decided, because last night I still didn't have, I had no information, and I'm supposed to be on this panel. So
This is it. I don't have a good feeling about what's going to happen at town meeting on this issue. And I think what's happened is, we have this in Nantucket, this simplistic answer to is why is housing so expensive? It's because of non-resident owners. But I'm down in Miami, and whenever you pick up a paper down there, it's the same issue. It has nothing to do with non-resident owners. It just has to do with there are not enough houses for everybody that wants them, and that the lower wage earners or workers, their rental properties are disappearing because they're being demolished and turned into high-rise condominiums and blah, blah, blah. It's the same thing throughout the United States, and it has to do with supply and demand. So in Nantucket, you come back and Nantucket's got its whipping boy, which is the non-resident. And because everybody on this call is such nice people, whether or not they rent, It's those horrible off-island investors, the faceless investors, who probably are in the distinct minority of what's going on here. The real culprit is probably the land bank and the Conservation Commission with sacred cows.
Right.
And so I just don't know what's going to happen here. I think we've done our bit to highlight, an important issue, discrimination, and I think we've done what we can do on this issue.
Yep, I agree. We have the same thing. In Palm Beach County, Palm Beach, you can't even buy anything in Palm Beach anymore. Nothing's for sale. But if it is, it's over $20 million. And there's an article in the Journal yesterday, the Wall Street Journal had this big article saying, guess what? West Palm Beach, which used to be where the help used to live, same thing is happening now.
Yeah.
Can't buy anything under $5 million. I mean, so it's just, what happened is to our country, I think you all know what happened. The country has been awash in money for the last 3 or 4 years, awash in money. When interest rates are so low, people could take out mortgages for 1% or 1.5%. I mean, everyone bought everything and so what happens is people take advantage of that. And it looks like it's probably going to be ending shortly. Now that I saw yesterday, I didn't see today's paper, the current rate, the mortgage rate is up to 4.67%. That's a lot different than 1.5 or 2%. So I think it'll finally slow down and hopefully not turn us into another 3 or 4 year depression, but recession. But we'll have to see. But that's what happened. And it's same thing. And in Nantucket, just like everywhere else, people had enough money that every available piece of property. Same thing happened in West Palm Beach. Even here we're in Wellington, we're west of Palm Beach. People buying these $1.5 million homes, and next thing you know, they fix it up and it's on the market for $3.5 million. I mean, it's craziness. So, and Nantucket's no different. And I'm not surprised that the Nantucket Civic League realizes that, that's the third rail. They get inside it. They want to get a discussion about short-term rental. That'll be it. They'll be screaming and yelling. And that's the end of the civilization. Okay, so so the question is, so I'm not going to be on Nantucket for Daffodil. I'm having some surgery done on my eyes, so I need to get my cataracts taken care of finally. So I won't be there, and Peter won't be there. So Kathy, I know you'd like to be there for the Nantucket Together. I have no problem with that. But as you know, even on our behalf, you could certainly say that our view is that the articles that the town put forward make sense, and I have no problem with you talking about that. How you switch from them to us, I don't know, but certainly our position has been made clear. It's in the newspaper. People screamed at me and calling me names, saying I don't know what the law is. I think I'm right about the law. I think all those people writing articles about me saying I'm not wrong about the law, I think they're wrong. But anyway, I'm entitled to practice before the United States Supreme Court, but not in the state of Massachusetts.
Right. Right. Well, they can just throw tomatoes at me instead of you.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're free to attend that meeting on our behalf if you'd like to. That's my view. Anybody else want to do that? I don't think so.
So do you need to just write something, Gary, to the moderator to say that Kathy is your designee?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
I promise I'll behave myself.
Okay. We can do that.
Out of character.
The next thing on the agenda is follow up on noise bylaw revisions. I'm not sure we need to do anything about that. No one seems to be worrying about it right now.
The only question I have having been beaten and scarred by noise bylaws, which is, I'm going deaf because of the noise, and then I'm also bruised. But it strikes me that if and ever the short-term rental issues start calming down, that some of those organizations would be very, very effective in actually creating grassroots support for revising the noise bylaws in some sensible way. And
I thought, Peter, the one issue that came out of the short-term rental debate is that there were not a ton of noise complaints, when they talked to the people in the town and stuff like that. And that was the reason they were using for all of these complaints about the short-term rentals. Turns out that based on town statistics, there aren't a lot of people screaming about noise. So I think we have to wait until the noise crescendo gets so large that it starts affecting people's enjoyment of the season. I think, by the way, we're going to have a really difficult summer season this year. From what I can tell, we will be just mobbed with people. The ferry's sold out. We have friends who have a home on the island. They're trying to get their car here. They can't get a reservation to bring their car back. So the ferry is sold out. My wife's the social chairman of the Westmore Club, and they were there were some vendors that said they want to come and do some of these pop-up shops. So my wife called one of the brokers, real estate brokers, and said, these people are looking for temporary space. They want to come for a few days to sell their goods. She says, there's nothing available. Everything is rented already. We're done. They're done. All the rentals, July and August, forget about it. There's nothing available. I mean, it's unbelievable. So it's going to be a crunch of a summer. It's going to be a crunch of a summer. There's going to be just a lot of people here. A lot more people found and enjoyed Nantucket over the last 2 years during the COVID stuff. And they'll be back. Hopefully the restaurants will get a little more help, so they'll be able to serve the public better, because, as you know, some of the restaurants stopped serving lunch and dinner because they didn't have enough help. I think it's going to be a tough summer. It's going to be really, really crowded on island. People will be screaming a lot. Maybe then we'll be talking about parking issues again, parking downtown. Right now, it's not an issue, but I think it'll be an issue.
And there won't be any UPS trucks anyway.
That's true.
Did you see the barge proposal?
Yes.
It's amazing. But
I wonder who lost their job over that one at UPS. I mean, really, wow.
Former employee.
Yes.
Okay, so now the town meeting is May 2nd is the annual town meeting. So I'm just thinking about, should we have another meeting on, what I'm thinking about is maybe May 14th or something like that. There's nothing we have to talk about before the meeting. We're not going to influence the meeting anymore. The die is cast of that. The question is, we probably should think about meeting. We normally have our first meeting of the year with the town manager in mid-June, right? That's, I think my recollection is that's our norm. And I'm thinking that if that is the case, is it worthwhile for us to have another meeting between now and mid-June? The only thing we talk about at that meeting would be the results of the town meeting and the election.
Why don't we see what happens at the town meeting and then make that determination?
Okay, well,
If you do have a meeting in May, after May 10th, you'll have, someone else will have to set up the Zoom and run it.
oh,
which is
no.
fine.
How long are you gone for?
We're going on to Northern Europe for 6 weeks, so I will be gone actually the middle of May through the 3rd week of June. So
Northern Europe, is that the Ukraine?
it would be 1,000 miles from there. I looked on a map. So unless there's World War III, in which
Yeah.
case we will be here. We're planning to, we're like Norway, Scotland, up in there. We'll be around in there, visiting family in Ireland. My dad was born in Ireland, so those meetings would have to be run by somebody else, which is fine. I can do all of the paperwork part, but I just can't run the Zoom call.
Mm. Mm. So you're back in June 10th?
No, I get back the 24th of June. So the last week of
24th?
June, 24th, yeah, 6 weeks,
Oy.
hopefully.
Mm.
So, come on, you guys can do it.
You know, Peter,
Sounds like a challenge. Well, we did it once,
Yeah.
and it worked, although I think I kept, it's the gatekeeper part of this, letting people in, and I think I left poor Bill out for most of the meeting or something. Bill Sherman, that is.
okay. So,
Robert Levy just said in the chat he could run the meeting.
I can probably do that for you, depending on when it is and how long it is. I have a paid subscription to Zoom, so if it works out, I'd be happy to do that for you, for
Well,
us.
we're required to use the town's
Yep.
setup.
yeah,
So it'd have to be all the passwords. We'd have to use the towns, and it has to be recorded, and there's lots of rules because it's a public meeting, just like the select
Right.
board, the FinCom is.
Okay.
but
Well,
thank you for that.
Yeah, as a last resort, if you can't figure it out, let
Okay,
me know and I'll be happy to help in any way I can.
that's very nice of you, Robert. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, well, I'm sure that if we need to meet, we can figure out some way to do it. I frankly don't know my own schedule at that point, but I'm here, there, and everywhere.
Well, as I say, my current thinking was, do we need to have a meeting after the town votes on all this stuff, just to talk about, whether there's any impact on us or not? I don't, we could kind of wait and see. As I say, I'm having my eye surgery then, so I think I'll be able to talk.
Yeah, we just need to get an agenda and tell the town, like, by the Tuesday before we decide to meet. That's-
Okay. Okay. And the more important meeting is the one that we invite Libby Gibson, town manager, to our meeting, and that's usually in June. Well, the good news is that at least till July 15th, we could have the meeting on Zoom.
Yeah,
Just because that's what the emergency order was extended until. But most of us will be on island, so at that time. So we have to figure out what we want to do about that. By the way, they're not sure where the meetings are going to take place in the future. I think that the last conversation that was had by the select board, and the last comment I heard Erica Mooney talk about, was the fact that, that ugly building in Mid-Island near the Stop and Shop that used to be part of the, the town thing. They
Fire
turned
department?
that, the meeting that they all complain about, that the HDC is complaining about, right? That building has been turned into a Zoom facility for the hybrid meetings. Now, and that's because they lost the ability to use both the rooms that we used to use at fairgrounds. Remember, when we met at fairgrounds, we used to either meet on the second floor or the first floor. Anyway, they lost one of the two rooms. So now they only have the right to use the bottom floor, and only the select board gets the right to use that. I'm not sure anybody else gets the right to use that. So what they've done is they converted this crazy looking building near Stop and Shop in Mid-Island into a hybrid facility. But I don't know if those rules apply to our committee. The good news and the bad news about our committee is that we meet on Saturday morning. Who the hell are going to use the fairground? We're the only ones that are crazy enough to meet on a Saturday morning. And that's because the tradition was, since we are, quote, seasonal, although most of us are there for months and months and months, some people didn't get onto the island until, came for weekends, and they were seasonal residents, and they would come on Friday and leave on Monday. And so they could certainly join our committee for Saturday morning meetings. So that's probably how it started 20 years ago. And it was still using those Saturday mornings. So we'll have to find out whether or not we could use that first floor facility, or we have to go to that Mid-Island facility if we want to do a hybrid meeting.
Do you know if they need staff there to support the meeting, or can you run it yourself?
No, they need staff there. They need at least the people from, Nantucket TV and CTV. Yeah.
I think it's more complicated to run the meeting too, I guess.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Is one other point I want to give somebody an assignment in thinking about non-voting taxpayers, and thinking about, I started to do a little research, and the question is, are there rules that really look after non-voting taxpayers to make sure that we don't get discriminated against, like the current law that is under consideration, like Article 43, which clearly discriminates against non-voting taxpayers. And so I found something that says, I found a couple of decisions by the United States Supreme Court that one of them is a very famous case. It's called Austin versus New Hampshire. And it says states must tax the income of residents and non-residents in a substantially equal manner, okay? And then I read some other stuff that says the United States Constitution, Article 4, Section 2, is the Privilege and Immunities Clause. And it basically says, citizens of each state shall be entitled to all privileges and immunities of citizens in several states. And so what I started thinking is there's a lot of instances where we non-voting taxpayers don't get the benefit of some of the benefits that the seasonal taxpayers, that the full-time residential taxpayers get. And I think that's wrong. But I'd like someone to, I wonder if there's any Massachusetts legal decisions that talk about that constitutional right we have not to be discriminated against. Let me give you one example that bothers me, and I don't know why it bothers me, but it does. When you read the papers and you read about the efforts that the town is making to be a good green citizen, quote unquote, ecologically positive. They talk about the law that is encouraging tax breaks for folks who put the solar heating on their roofs, the solar panels on their roofs. But if you take a look at the rules, it only applies to residents Now, I think that's illegal. Once again, talking off the top of my head. And not only is it illegal, it's make bad sense. If the town is trying to use less regular electricity and supplement the benefits of getting solar energy to reduce our use of the cables, why wouldn't the town want to encourage solar panel roofing for residents and non-residents? And yet, if you look at the proposals that the town talks about when they're pushing this, they only give the benefits to the residential taxpayers. And maybe we have to have Lauren Sinatra, is that her name, Lauren Sinatra? I think she's the town energy lady. I think we probably have to have her come to a meeting, and I'd like to say to her, hey, if it's good for the town, if it's good to reduce less energy, why wouldn't you want to give some breaks to there's a lot more of us. There's a lot more of us. And the more that there's a ton of us that own homes, the non-resident taxpayers own a ton of homes. It's a ton of electricity that we could save by encouraging them to use, so Peter, you just think it's a financial matter?
Yeah, it's money. It's all about money. And so if you can only, if you want to incentivize people,
Yep.
and you think it requires X dollars to incentivize somebody, and you only have, 20X in the treasury for this purpose, you're going to discriminate, right? Amongst those who you're going to incentivize. Now, I think we're going into a sort of different chapter of this whole story, where there's recognition that everybody's got to do a lot of this stuff that only a couple of people are doing in order to save the world. And that may change, or, quite frankly, it may just be in a person's interest whether or not they have a subsidy to do the darn thing. But I think it's basically budget and money.
But I think that if you listen to what I said about the immunities, the privileges and immunities clause, you can't treat citizens of a state different than citizens of non-citizens of states. And
Well, if you're correct, you're right. It's a
really simple
a
thing.
good question.
It's a really simple thing. Well, why would you? First, you shouldn't be encouraging people to go solar. And just saying it costs less. I mean, there was some.
This is one of 50 different questions about solar
I
energy.
know, that's why I want somebody here to look up Massachusetts law.
I looked into solar for Nantucket.
Yes.
And even an equally important question is that the utilities basically have created statutes and regulations that prevent you from putting all the solar that you could put on your roof. I think you're limited to 15 kW or something like that, whereas maybe you're consuming, 50 kW, and maybe you have a roof that's big enough to do that, but you can't. So there are all kinds of complicated questions about this issue.
Yeah, but that doesn't get into the issue of treating citizens, residents versus.
Oh, no, I perfectly well agree. I'm just saying there are just lots and lots of, there's lots of disincentives to doing this in the most beneficial way for people in the environment. And you've hit hit one of them. But my recollection is that actually the incentive, the Massachusetts or the Nantucket incentive is rather modest in any event that we're talking about, compared to the overall cost of the project.
Well, I don't know how to do legal research anymore, but I'd love to know if Massachusetts honors the privileges and immunities clause that prevents resident taxpayers from getting better treatment than non-resident taxpayers. The only instance I know that it does occur, and it's been approved as a special act of the legislature by the governor and the legislature is the tax break that residents get. That's the only one on real estate tax. And everything else, as far as I'm concerned, should not be permissible, and we should get the modest little benefits, whether it's a sticker price or, you know, getting a beach sticker, stuff like that. All of that stuff we ought to get the benefit of. But someone needs to do a little research for me. I don't know about that. Anyway, that's for another time. Okay, so what we're deciding is that we're going to finalize the resolution that we did, and we're going to think about whether we have a meeting in mid-May after the annual town meeting. Is that right?
Yes.
So you said you wanted to determine when you have the meeting after town meeting, you'll figure it out, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Robert Levy just chatted. Can you please direct me to the rules and regs regarding solar? My national grid bill, when everything was turned off this winter, was $700 per month.
Hi. Yeah, my circuit breakers were turned off and my bills were $700 to $800 per month.
Jesus.
Yeah,
How could they do that?
I have no idea, but this is the second time it's happened, and nobody is stealing my electricity, but something is seriously wrong. And I did talk to Ms. Sinatra. She
Yes.
is the right.
Yes.
She said to me that maybe you should check to see if somebody's living in your house, which I did, and nobody was living in my house. I drained the pipes, I disconnect everything and shut everything down, and yet my bill was still that high. And this is the second year that this has happened. Now my bill was $7, which is fine. I mean, you know, with everything disconnected, which it always is disconnected when I leave, but something is terribly wrong.
Well, did you talk to National Grid about it?
Yeah, I talked to National Grid. I will talk to them again.
Does it show how many kilowatt hours we
Yeah,
use?
it shows me how many kilowatt hours have been used. I had a new meter put in as well. And it shows that a lot of kilowatt hours were used, but there's nobody there. And there were no extension cords to the house next door. I mean, they must be reading a wrong meter.
Do you have your heating shut off in the wintertime?
I don't heat the house. I drain the pipes of water.
Yeah.
I disconnect everything. I turn the circuit breakers off.
Well, I would suggest that when whoever does that, whether it's you personally or somebody else, on whatever day they turn the circuit breakers off, and actually you just need to put the main breaker to the house off. You don't have to.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah. Well, I have a
they
security.
take a picture of that and
system.
take a picture of the meeting at that moment in
Yeah.
time, meter rather, at that moment in time.
Yeah,
So that you have something to talk about.
that's a good idea. The one, I do have a security system, which is low voltage. So I have my alarm
Yeah.
system, my fire system still running. I turn everything else off, and the heaters are on separate breakers, but the only circuit I leave on is the one outlet to the security system.
Yeah.
So I like your suggestion. The other idea is to put a solar panel up there to power a low voltage, you know, small solar array up there just to power the security system when I'm not there, and disconnect from the grid.
Well, even then, I don't think you're disconnected typically. I don't know whether you can, but presumably you can. But these solar systems, when you put a real solar system in, it goes both ways. It will sometimes be
Yeah.
feeding the grid and sometimes be
Right.
taken from the grid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah.
I think some contractor was using your electricity or something.
Yeah, you know, it does sound like that, but
Yeah.
how they could, yeah. But anyway, and I know this, I don't want to take over your meeting, but if you could direct me to a place where I could learn about the rules and regulations for putting a small solar, you know, a couple panels up there. I don't want to do the whole roof, obviously, but maybe 2 or 3 panels would probably power the whole thing.
Well, Lauren is the one who runs the program for the town. Lauren.
Ah. Oh, I'll get in touch with her then.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we had one of our meetings several years ago when she talked about the desire for us to avoid a third undersea cable. And, at that point, they weren't pushing solar roofs because the HCC wasn't going to approve any anyway. That was several years ago, maybe that was 5 years ago. So now that people realize we really ought to be taking these affirmative steps, they are pushing the solar roofs, but as I say, from my point of view, improperly, they're not giving the non-resident taxpayers that same incentive to do so to protect the island. And we probably ought to have her as a guest one of these days and ask her why that makes sense.
How about
Thank
a
you.
letter, how about a
Ciao, ciao.
letter from us to the township attorney?
Mm. Okay. I think it's about time for us to wrap up.
Somebody move to,
Yes.
Adjourn?
When are you folks going to be on island? I'm going to be on there late May, hopefully.
I'll be in and out, but probably starting around July for the rest of the
Yeah.
summer.
And okay. And Peter, by the way, did you go to Foshan when you were in Paris?
I did not go to Foshan,
Oh,
but I went to several other good places.
Oh,
You
my
have to make
favorite.
another trip back.
Okay, got a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I move.
Second, all in favor? Aye. All right, everyone, stay safe, everybody. Let's hope that Nantucket continues to have a low level of infection, and let's hope this craziness that seems to be coming from Europe, hopefully it doesn't cross the Atlantic again. Hopefully.
Good luck with your eyes.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, take care, everybody.
take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.